Mr. Gentiloni, a real pleasure to speak to you. Are you a little bit more relaxed now that you're no longer in power? It's a different life.
Wonderful place.
It is a wonderful place. When you look at the budget law, what does this government need to do to show international investors that they're serious, that they respect the EU so that spreads don't widen?
Well, I think that something is clear. We don't have now an economic crisis in Italy. Jobs, export growth are still on the right track. What we do have since 2 or 3 months is a crisis of confidence in the international markets. And the government practically didn't decide anything until now, but the crisis of confidence is there. So I understand that this simple fact pressed the government to slow down a little bit on their fantastic and incredible promises of their electoral campaign. So what we need is to continue on the path that we followed in the last years to rebuild our growth, our jobs, our exports, without creating more debt and so without creating a crisis of confidence in the international financial market.
But, Mr. Gentiloni, how can they do that without breaking all the promises that they did during the campaign?
There is no way. They have to decide. And I, frankly, I'm rather hopeful. I wouldn't say confident. I'm hopeful that they will decide the right thing. The right thing is to recognize, you will never recognize it so openly and so publicly, but in fact to recognize that what you promised in your electoral campaign was totally exaggerated or even fake, and now you have to continue in a realistic and progressive policy. Will they do this? I think that they have a serious political risk for them to have a disappointment on their electoral basis. Will they not do this? I think they have a worse risk, because it is a risk of a crisis of confidence in the business community, workers, families, consumers, and financial markets. And this is too dangerous for such an important country as such Italy is in Europe.
So do you believe that the government and, at the end of the day, Matteo Salvini cares about the spread?
Yes, I think that he cares. I think that he tried to give the impression that they could make it without caring of the spread. The problem is not the spread, it's in general the confidence of the financial market. But at the end of the day, I hope that they are understanding, and the Minister of Finance is struggling for this, and I'm hopeful that he will win his struggle. They are understanding that you cannot play games with the financial stability of our countries. We had financial problems 6 years ago, not 60 years ago, and we lasted 4 or 5 years to go out of this situation.
Do you worry about the vulnerability of Italian banks? And again, if the budget actually comes in with Italy flaunting the EU rules, is there a danger that the finance minister resigns? That would impact the spreads, and that would, of course, impact Italian banks.
Yes, that would be a substantial risk. The banks were in a very dangerous situation 2 or 3 years ago, not the banks, some Italian banks. Our governments were able to manage this crisis. We put on the Italian banks less public money than several other European countries, and less public money than US made 10 years ago. And the banks are safe. Non-performing loans are dramatically reduced. But obviously, if you have a general doubt on the confidence of the markets on the country, the banks could be again with problems. Every 10 or 20 points of spread creates problems for the banks.
How vulnerable is Italy it kind of seems to be caught in the crosshairs of the US-China war because this is an export-driven economy, but also historically Italy has a lot of ties to emerging markets, to Argentina, to Brazil, and also to Turkey. So how much will that impact, Italian reform and growth? Well,
the situation now of our export is very positive. Sunshine, I would say. Several areas of the world that were in serious difficulties are now a little bit slowing down their difficulties. The Eurozone, which is our main economic partner for export, is in good shape. The American economy accepts Italian products very positively. We had some difficulties with Russia, but even this difficulty is a little bit slowing down. So we had in 2017 our historical record of export and of surplus in our export. After Germany, we are the stronger European country on industrial export, and I think we will keep this position. Obviously, we need for this, one, a good climate in the economic environment all over the world, and secondly, we need the confidence of our entrepreneurs, of our business community. This is what the government is in some way putting at risk, the confidence of Italian entrepreneurs.
I remember you working a lot on, the brain trade and trying to get Italians back to this country. Is there a danger that Italians now leave the country, or does Brexit actually help in that way? A lot of people went to the UK. They may not want to anymore.
Yes, many of them then are coming back to Italy. Our universities are much more international than they were 20 years ago, so we are more frequently talking of Italians studying abroad and less frequently studying of students all over the world studying in Italy. I am not afraid of this. I am afraid of the fact that all the quality that we need now in our societies to be competitive and to face the technological revolution, our qualities on school, on education, on university, on companies, and all this depends on the fact that you have political stability and a government that has a realist approach. With a populist and nationalistic approach, I think that we put at risk all this.
Do you see early elections in Italy? Would we have elections next year? And could you envisage a scenario where actually the euro currency takes center stage on the actual campaign?
I don't think the euro currency, not at the moment. For sure, the two political parties of the government are supporting a weaker Europe, a climate in Europe where each single country has stronger powers, and he is finger-pointing to the neighbors and accelerating trade controversies, border controversies, migration controversies. I frankly believe that this is crazy, that our European elections should, if possible, cancel this risk, because Europe ran this risk in our own history, and we cannot repeat the experience of what we called the sleepwalkers in the last century. Because we begin talking of trade, of tariffs, of Schengen, of divisions, of borders, and we don't know where we end.
But so, Mr. Gentiloni, would you say that in the next 2 years is make or break for the European Union? Either the countries get together and become stronger almost as one, or actually there's a real danger that Europe breaks apart, that the Eurozone breaks apart?
There is a risk. 5 or 6 years ago, I wouldn't have said that there is such a risk.
But now more.
Now the risk is there. I am confident that in the next elections, the forces that are believing in strengthening and not weakening the European Union will prevail. But it will be, for the first time, a real fight. European elections normally are elections nobody participates. You are dealing with national issues and not with the European issues. This time, next May, for the first time, we will have a European challenge, a real European challenge, and we have to win it.
But how do you communicate, right? This goes back to the populists, just frankly being much better at speaking to the population and the voters. How do moderate politicians reconnect that and actually speak in plain Italian or plain French or in plain German to their voters?
I think that we have to stress the fact that Europe can change, can do better. But if you cancel Europe, you cancel our social model, welfare state. You cancel our liberal model, freedom of press, autonomy of the judiciary. You cancel the role that Europe has to play to keep peace in the world. So the issues and the values at stake are so relevant that I think that we will win this battle. I'm confident, I'm sure that we will.